Okay, so with your what you're going to be designing is a website that has the look of how a website works. So when we talk about that, when we talk about this, what we start to call interactive design, we have this balance on the page between the content as well as the navigation. Okay, so when you use a website or even use an app, what you have is the content, the information, but also how do you move through that website. Okay, and so this is where these menus start working. Now, they can be used in many different ways. Some people use like icons. The most common way is to use language, to use words, to actually inform how that works. Now, so we have this section up the top called the header, okay? And so as we move through this website, the header, whoops, let's just go back to where we were. The header stays the same. It doesn't move, it doesn't change, even though they are actually different pages. Okay, so we have this system set up where we have a design, a composition working consistently across the pages. Okay? So there's many, many ways that these can be put together. But the important thing to note when we start talking about not just web design, but publication design as well, where we have design that is a combination of images and text. Okay, the balance is using what we call a grid. Okay, have you discussed the grid in any of your other subjects yet? Yes? Is that a yes or no? No. Okay. Okay, so a grid is like the foundations of a house or any sort of building. Okay? It's the grid is the organisation of how it works from the outside in. And when we look at this, we look at the way in which there's a consistency in the placement and organisation of the information across the pages. So you'll note that as we move across the pages, there's the placement, the positioning of the type and the header is in the same place. Okay? So this is centre aligned text, so obviously will, depending upon the text itself, it will go wider or narrower, but it is consistent. Okay? When we look through here, okay, there's a consistency of placement. So what we need to do is organise a grid in these systems. So in web design, they talk of what's called a 12-column grid. Have you had a column grid set up before in any of your subjects?
You can do it in InDesign.
You can do it in InDesign, yeah. So have you been setting up grids? Not in any of the classes? Okay, so I'll go on to say that it's probably one of the most important things to incorporate into your designs, okay? The organisation. And we can do it quite easily in the way we set up columns and rows within the page, okay? InDesign does it quite well. It does it quite automatically. You've been using InDesign for you have been using InDesign?
I think we're using it at the moment.
You have? Okay, I'm just sort of wondering if we should use InDesign for this to help you then. It might be a helpful way of using it then, I think. Okay. So I'm just setting up InDesign. Now you can do this with me as well if you like. If you like to just start up InDesign. You'll find that InDesign is ideal for setting up design which is a combination of images and text. It has a really powerful text panel, and the way that we bring images in and we can arrange them is also quite powerful, and it's the standard. So the way we're doing this will be similar to the way that you would have created. Have you created a book? Have you done a booklet or pages in a book, and you used InDesign for that?
Yeah, just
Okay, good. Okay, so this will sort of build upon what you have done. We all good? Everyone fine? Okay. So I'm going to come up to create new. And like Photoshop and Illustrator that we have used, we have an option to choose web. Okay. Now we're actually going to choose a specific website dimension. So I'll just come down to these presets and we'll see what we have. Okay, and we do actually have this one here. So this size, 1280 by 800, is an average size for a laptop. Okay, small laptop. So it is a good one, and so we sort of need, when we do design things like websites and the like, we need to design them for the most people to use. So if we designed website for a large screen desktop computer, then people who are looking at them on smaller laptops are probably not going to be able to fit everything in or need to be scrolling. So we'll just build this at a nice small screen size, and this will work well with your folio as well. So all I've done is I've said view more presets, and so here 1280 by 800 pixels. Okay. Now let's just make 5 pages to start with, but we can always add more or take them away. Okay? So we'll do that. Now, have you talked about facing pages before? So what do they mean by facing pages? Sort of like the pages in a book, isn't it? So we're designing a left page and a right. So with a website, we don't have facing pages. So we have that unticked. Okay? Of course, the unit that we're using in measurement is pixels, always for screen. We don't have to worry about setting up bleed because it's screen. Okay, so we don't have anything there. We'll just leave our margins as they are for the moment, and we'll just leave the columns as well because we'll be setting those up custom. And so what I'm showing you will be the way that for the rest of your design studies, as well as your professional careers, you'll be setting up documents in this way. Okay? So I'll just go create. So all of these things we can change, but let's just work with this HD format. Okay. So, we all good? I'm just going to zoom out. You don't have to worry about this, just so you can see what we have. So I'm just going command minus, minus, minus. So there's our pages, okay? And here, in the pages panel, we can see all of these pages together. Now, you'll note that all of these pages have the letter A on them. Have you talked about that in any of your classes? No? It's to do with the master page. Okay? And so one of the things to understand about InDesign is that master pages are a very important component to make things work in terms of positioning across the pages. So if we do something in a master page, so you don't need to do this, okay? So if I just created a square just here, okay, you can see that I've put it into page 1, okay? Cut. Okay, I've just double clicked into the master page, all right? So you can see that all my pages have not appeared. Now, if I paste that rectangle into my master page, you can now see that it's been replicated on all the pages. So, therefore, anything that goes into a master page will follow in all of the pages that are in control of the A master. I can have, and we're not going to worry about it, but we can actually have new master pages. We can have a B master, a C master. This is where publication design can get not so much complicated, but needing to be organised in different ways. So say, for example, a magazine, that magazine might have 150, 200 pages of different ways, articles, advertisements, all of the content. It's not all going to be the same structure across all of those pages. So we can do that. So I'm just going to cut that out. Okay, so what I am going to do is I'm going to talk about the organisation of a grid in the master page. Okay, and so a grid is quite simply the arrangement of some columns and some rows. Okay, now this is the way I do it. I go into my layout, I come down to my margins and columns. So this pinkish line, this box, is the margin. This is the distance from the edge of the frame. Okay, and so we've got a margin from the top, the left, the right, and the bottom. We can customize this. And if you have a look at various magazines, which are a really good example, you'll find that different magazines have different margins that they use. So, I'm just going to leave this at 36 for the time being. But I am going to put some columns in. Now, how many columns do we need? Well, there's some magic numbers with columns. Okay, you can see here I've got 3 columns here. Okay? 3 columns is quite common. If I go to 4, then something else comes in. I actually have a column that actually tells me where the centre of the page is. That's very helpful. Okay, if we're aligning information or text in the centre, it's good to know where the centre is. Okay, so 4's quite a helpful number. But what if we wanted 3 columns as well? Well, if I went to 6, then 6 can be divided by 2, so I have a centre margin, but I also have 1, 2, 3 columns as well. Okay? So 6 columns is quite handy. But the magic one that we're not going to go this far, but 12 column grids are a system that are used universally. 12 can be divided by 2, it can be divided by 3, and it can be divided by 4, as well as 6. Okay, so with this, we could have 1, 2, 3, 4 columns. We could have 3 columns. We can also have a halfway point. Okay, so if I come into here and I look at, here we go, 12 column grids, you actually start to see the organisation that goes into websites, and the grid is that.
And did you like standard gutter?
Say that again?
Did you use standard gutter?
It does change. I mean, as a designer, quite often you might use different guttering. You might want some wide spaces between things. So that's part of your own design strategy that you start looking at. But what you'll want to do is just look around, look at magazines, look at organisation of website, and just have a look at the distances between columns of text and have a look at the margins. And so you really get a good idea by just doing some, when you're looking around at things, just having some examples. Okay? So,
Would you also fit it to the page or the margin?
well, you normally fit it to, I personally fit them to the margins, but now if I could give you any sort of handy bit of advice, your use of a grid when you're putting your stuff out in a portfolio will be probably noticed by a graphic designer who is looking to employ you in the first half a second. All right? It'll be one of the first things that they see. Okay? You want to use a grid. Okay? You don't just stick things around. Okay? You use a grid. Very, very important. Okay, especially if you want employment. Okay, there's a few other ones, but grid essential. Okay, and so you go to library, do some research online, have a look at grids, and you'll find that there are many examples. I have a favourite book of mine, and you'll find it in many libraries. Making and Breaking the Grid. This one here. Okay. You see it around. I think I saw it as a PDF. Did that what I just saw? We'll have a look, but I want you to really start paying attention to this. And so part of your design education is having a look at designs, okay? Having a look at magazines, at books, at websites, at apps, and actually looking at the way things are set up. So when we talk about set up, it is, look at that, it is there. How about I download that, put it on the Moodle for you? Would you like that? Bit of light reading for home. Okay, but this is there are many books. If you go to Kunaknia or something, you'll see a shelf, many shelves devoted to grids. Okay, hundreds of books in good bookstores. Okay. Any design art bookstore, you'll find there are lots and lots of books. Okay, well that's very handy. Let's download that. We'll whack that up. Bit of light reading. At this point at Certificate 4 level, it's just your organisation that you're wanting to start paying attention to. Okay? And when we talk about organisation, we're talking about how we align content. Okay? How we align images and text together. Okay? So I think 12 is probably a little bit confusing at the moment, so how about we just go back to 6? Okay? Different teachers will have their different setups, of course, but I like 6 because, it's good to have, I might have a margin, I might have a menu on the left or the right side, okay? I might have some images placed in different ways, so we'll just have a look at that. I'll just leave the gutter at 12 for the moment, and I'll go, okay. Now, if I go through and look at my pages, because I put that grid in the master page, all of them now have that. So I'm just going to come in now and I'm just going to put some rows, also called hang lines. And I do that with this Create Guides section. Okay? I'd sort of like doing this. You notice I can also put columns in here. Click on Preview. Okay, maybe I'll work with 6 for that for the moment. Okay. I could look at how, and I don't mind if you experiment with this. Okay. Try different things. So let's just say let's work with 8 actually. We'll go okay. So now we have this set up, And what the grid will magically do is it will actually help us in the way that we organise things. Okay? So let's save that. Now what I'm going to do, and I'm going to emphasise, is your folder management, your file management. Okay, I want you to start organising yourself as a professional designer will. So when we do this, okay, I want you to create a folder. What's going to happen is we're going to be placing images into this document. Okay, those images are going to be linked. I'll talk about that in a little bit more detail, but it means I need to have all of my images in a folder with this document. So everything is organised in the one place. Okay? So I'll create a new folder and I'll call this, I'll just call it Assess 3. You can web prototype. Okay, you can call it. It might be the name of the resort. I think mine's Sea Snake Resorts. I think my resort is. I'll pop that in here. So I've created that. And so in here, I'll just call this so it's the Sea Snake Resort. And I'm calling this 01 because if I do an update or a new version, that will be 02. 03. So each time I do a change or try something else out, I've got a version on it. Okay? Now, handy hint for you. If you are working between different computers, okay, there is a chance that you will have a computer which has a different version of InDesign on there. Maybe an earlier version or a later one. Now, if I just do this InDesign 2021 document, which is what we're going to do, it will be, let's just save it. You'll notice up here that it's .indd, an InDesign document. Okay? That is fine, but I will say that this InDesign document will only open up on this version of InDesign or earlier, not later. Okay? If I've got an updated version of InDesign on a different computer or someone's using it and they try to open up this and it was made on an earlier version, it will not open. Okay? So, just as a little word, if you're saving this at the end, if you save it as this IDML, that will open up on earlier versions of InDesign going back almost 15 years. Okay? So that's only if you're sharing or if you're working between different computers. So if like Angelo, you're working on one laptop, it's not going to be an issue. Okay? If you're working on these computers, it's more likely that if you're working at home, you'll have a more up-to-date version of InDesign than these ones. Okay, these only get updated every semester at best. Okay, so just be aware that at the end of the class, you can always just save it as an IDML, and you'll be able to open up that on a different computer. Okay? So that's pretty helpful knowledge to know. So, here is our setup. Here's our grid. Okay, here's our organisation. And so now, if I start making pieces for this website, then I think, okay, well, this is how we work. So with InDesign, this is why we're using it for web. I've actually created apps available with the iTunes App Store with InDesign previously. It actually has a very large interactive part of the program. Okay, so it is very, very helpful. It's not just for publication or magazine design. It gets into interactive design as well. So it's a really, really strong program to use in making designs that have multiple pages. Like so an app will be like that. Magazines, websites, they have multiple pages, and so InDesign does that really well. Okay, Illustrator will do it as well. There's nothing wrong with Illustrator, but we find here in InDesign the margins and the columns are a really good feature to use. Okay, and this is why I'm using InDesign here. Okay, and so really, really standard things. So if you've probably used a little bit of InDesign already, there's a very specific way we do things. One, we start with a frame. Okay. We've got a frame and we fill it with content. So that might be a colour. Okay, and so now using my grid, so much like this, the header has organised itself quite well. Okay. I might have here, we can see here, that I might have a footer here. Like I might end up changing this, the actual setup. Okay, so okay, there's my footer. Okay, and so on. It gets very, very easy to organise things when you've got these columns there. Okay, and so all these things will come to being. Okay, so we create a frame and we can put a colour into it. Actually, let's just go over here. Let's see this. Here's my resort images. So I'm just going to just copy these from my file. I'm putting them into this folder. Okay, now I know where they are. Okay, so be very organised with this. Now, the other thing to note, as a graphic designer, quite often, if you're working for an agency, a design studio, you're working as part of a team. That means that you could be designing this and then passing it on to the next person, or to giving it to the person who's actually going to build the website. So they're going to have to pick up your file, your folders, and work out where you've put things. So if you're very, very organised, it means that other people can use it as well. Okay, name your files, put them in an organised place. Okay, so here we go. So now I know where they are. InDesign. I'll create another frame, file, place. Okay. Oh, I might have that one this time. Okay, and so now what happens is this image has been placed into the frame. Now, it's important to understand how InDesign works. So firstly, this frame that I created, okay, which I just used, and because I had a grid, I didn't have to think too much about how I was organising it. This frame I can shrink, but I'm not actually changing the size of the content. Okay? I come in here, and when I hover in the centre, you see this little circle, I click that, and now you'll see this sort of mustard yellow frame. That's the content. So if I come in here, I'll hold my shift key down. Okay? So what I'm doing is I'm moving the content within the frame. Okay? Very, very powerful in that way. So I can move the frame. I can move things around. Whoops. Here you can see that. Okay, so obviously need to scale it up. I might make it a little bigger. So as a designer, you say, okay, well, I just want, there's a bit of a hero image. Okay. So that frame can be filled with a colour. It can be filled with images. And the next thing, so I'll just come into my layers. Let's have a look at how this works. So, like Illustrator, everything will go into the one layer unless you create a different layer. Okay, we'll talk about the organisation of layers in the coming weeks. Okay, but that will be important as well. So I'll just hide this frame. So we're here. And the next thing I'll do is I'm going to create a frame and I'm going to put text into it. Okay, so I can do that two ways. I'll show you the way which is all right, but then I'll show you the much better way to do this. So I can create a frame, and then with the text tool I can click in there and I can start typing. So what shall I type? Pure indulgence and relaxation. So now if I zoom in, you'll notice that it is there. If I just highlight all of that, here's our character panel. Let's just bring that up in size. Okay.
Did you make that with the text tool? With the
I clicked in the frame with the text tool, yes.
You made the frame and then you added the text?
Yeah, so that was one way. So Alex, so let's just say we've done it that way. I'm just going to copy this. So that's one way of doing it, which is all right, but you'll probably end up using a quicker way of doing it, which is the shortcut, which is with the type tool. Just creating the frame directly and putting it in. Okay? So with InDesign, the frame can hold coloured graphics, they can hold images, and they can hold text. So you create a frame for everything. Those are the three parts of any piece of graphic design. Okay, the graphics, the images, and the text. That's all graphic design is. And then how we just put that on a page or in a layout somehow. That's the magic. So with this, I can now, I might just bring up the character, type and tables, and the paragraph. I'll just put those together, make it a bit handier. Paragraph, okay, now it's centered. And because I have used a grid, I know that this is exactly in the center of the page. While I'm at it with the paragraph, we'll talk a lot more about typography in the coming weeks. I'm just going to untick the hyphenate button. Okay? So that's there. And so now, with our layers, we're starting to put things together. And maybe I might change the colour of this. Okay, starting to get there. But by putting up that grid in place at the start, you can see that my organisation starts to become a lot more, well, organised. Okay? Now, a couple of things to understand with InDesign. Firstly, if I look at this, the image looks very pixely. Okay? That is because InDesign is just showing us at preview level. We don't need to see it at high resolution. Okay? Mainly because InDesign is used for publication design. So just imagine that you're doing a big coffee table book with hundreds of pages, with hundreds of high resolution images in it. Okay? Every time we go and do something, our poor computer is having to deal with all of this information. So it just gives us preview quality. If you like, because we're not building a very, very large website, we can come down to the display performance, view, display, and go high quality display. And there we have the image at better resolution. I say that because I've had students in the past spending hours and hours resaving the image in Photoshop and then bringing it back in and still being pixely and not being able to work out why. So just take note. The other thing that I can do is I can just hit the tab bar and I can just see it without all my tools. And the other magic one, as long as I haven't got the type tool, the text selected, is the W. So I tap the W and it hides all my guides and frames. Then I can see it. Okay, so W is a handy shortcut, and the tab key is a way just to hide the or the information. Okay? So, what I want you to start thinking about is the information that needs to be on this website. Okay? And that's the menu. Think about the menu. Okay? Think about the images and just think about some headlines that you might have, the headings. Okay? We can use a little bit of lorem ipsum placeholder text for the body text, but we'll make the headings look meaningful. Okay?